Organic food is one of the fastest growing segments of the industry, with over 200 certified growers in Missouri and many more using organic principles. It's a big business in our state, and we'll find out more next on Show Me Ag. Welcome to Show Me Ag. I'm your host, Kyle Vickers. Thanks for joining us. Organic agriculture is the fastest growing segment in the food industry and huge business right here in Missouri. We have as our guest tonight Sue Baird. She's a certified organic inspector around the country and the executive director of the Missouri Organic Association, a not-for-profit organization established to advance the use of organic methods in our state. Sue, thanks for being with us tonight. I appreciate it. I mentioned that this is pretty fast growing. You've been in this for about 15 years. It's really been explosive, hasn't it?
It's been a great ride, yes. When we first started, organic was known to just be for the wood hippies, and now it has certainly become a standard in the organic industry. Right now they're saying we've got about 36 million food industry. It seems like to me that there's this huge spectrum from people using chemicals and GMO corn and so on to people that are really, and certified organic is really on the one full side of that. No chemicals, no pesticides. Tell us a little bit about how that works. What's the spectrum? You're exactly right. Organic doesn't use chemicals. We don't use synthetic chemicals. And people are concerned, what if I get out there in that field, my field needs some type of enhancement? And we can use those. Organic farmers use a lot of manures and poultry litters, things like that. They rely on soil tests pretty heavily. It is a science-based agriculture now. So they take a soil test to show the micronutrients, and then they go in and use naturally mined fertilizers, gypsums, rock, sulfur, phosphate, things that will add into that soil, enhance that soil, and build the soil so they're fertility.
Where's the consumer demand coming from? What's the impetus behind the demand for organic products?
People are really concerned about their foods. They're seeing more and more science that links pesticides, chemicals, GMOs to health issues. And they know that organic is a third-party certified, inspected product, and they have confidence in the organic word. And so that's where it's coming from.
And so the nature of this is people that are very concerned, but is it a lot more expensive for the consumer?
Sometimes. Sometimes there is more expense to the organic food if you buy from your local farmers, not normally. But if you go into your grocery stores, you're going to find a premium. You've got to remember, Kyle, that most of commodity agriculture are getting subsidies, and the organic farmer doesn't get those. And so when you buy organic foods, you're actually paying the full cost that farmer incurs while he's producing that food.
And you're buying, there's a lot of farm labor and management involved in this organic, so you're really paying for the farmer and his family as well.
That's exactly right. You're sustaining your own local economy, which is wonderful.
So I know at the beginning of this, it was very tough to make that transition. A lot of farmers were nervous about making it. Is there enough profit in it now that it's relatively a good proposition for a farmer to make that transition to organic?
Well, AgStats says that a small farmer will net $20,000 more for his farm if you're farming organically. But just for instance, I was in Sabetha, Kansas this summer inspecting a Bunge elevator, and you would think Bunge is one
of the biggest grain corporations in the world.
Exactly, and they do a segment there in Sabetha that is organic. And when I drove up to do that inspection, they had a big sign up for conventional corn, and they said $2.30. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how can farmers afford that? Well, I got in and I started talking to the manager, and he kind of half laughed. He said, well, yeah, $2.30, but we're also charging them 30-cent dump fee. And they thought that for some reason he found that amusing. But so for $2, the farmers were getting $2 basically for their corn. And at the same time, I was inspecting organic grain farmers that were getting $15 for the corn. So one farmer told me, well, my brother-in-law farms 10,000, that's hard for me to imagine, but 10,000 acres of conventional corn. I farm 600 acres of organic corn, and I'm netting more than he is.
So it works out pretty well for him.
So it works out pretty good. He likes it.
And is this something that you think is going to continue to grow, or is the market kind of saturated, or do you feel like there's still a lot of opportunity out there?
Oh, a whole lot of opportunity. The market just continues to grow. When I first started 15 years ago, we were afraid it's a fad, but it's not. Even
some of the bigger Costco, Walmart, as well as places like Whole Foods, they're carrying organics now, aren't they?
Oh, definitely. And in fact, I'm doing a consulting job. Can I name names?
Sure.
Okay, well, CNC Produce, which is one of the largest produce wholesalers in Missouri, in Kansas City, and they're getting ready to add a huge segment of their produce will be organic produce because they're seeing the handwriting on the wall.
Well, also there's some small scale, you mentioned somebody with 600 acres of organic corn. There are some small scale, farm to market type things, and then there are some big operations with several hundred acres of organics, which seems like a lot to try to handle without chemicals and so on.
Yes, but when they're large 100-acre certified organic vegetable production, and I just came back from Arizona. Yuma, Arizona produces 80% of vegetables in the United States in the wintertime. And so these organic vegetable farms are 1,000-acre, which is amazing to me, vegetable farms. And they use sound science. They, once again, they're using soil tests that balances that soil, and they're using mechanizing equipment that is built to do vegetable farming. So that's on a whole different scale than most of our farmers in Missouri. Well, I think all of our vegetable farms in Missouri.
Well, we're going to take a look at one of those smaller operations, but it's been very successful. Before we continue, we'd like to take a moment to introduce you to Curtis and Sarah Millsap near Springfield, Missouri. They've been operating their 20-acre organic CSA since 2008. Located just north of Springfield, this young family is passionate about establishing bonds of community with eaters, farmers, and anyone interested in learning the value of growing locally and sustainably.
This is Millsap Farm. This is the farm I own and operate. We've got 20 acres here. We have about 2 acres in vegetables, which includes about 10,000 square feet under cover like this. So we do year-round production. So here we are, first week of December, and we've got spinach, kale, chard, arugula, turnips, carrots, beets, you name it. If it's cool weather, we're growing it. What we don't do is tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, those kinds of things in the winter because those are summer crops. But we do extend the season. So you can see behind me I've got some peppers that are still kicking. But generally, by Christmas, we've wrapped up anything warm weather and we're going into the cold weather mode. The reason we grow all those vegetables, we realized a bunch of years ago that people eat year-round, so why wouldn't we produce year-round? So toward that end, we have several different ways we sell our vegetables, but community-supported agriculture is our biggest piece of that. And what that means is we have people who arrange in advance to get a share of our produce each week. And we do that in the summer and the winter. To me, the most profound movement right now is the move toward sourcing more of our food locally. And I think that has all sorts of different components. Obviously, one piece of that is the actual community piece where we're more connected to our food. Another piece of that is that local food tends to be more nutritious because it's fresher. If you get something that's harvested yesterday, you get a much more nutritious product than you do if it's harvested 2 weeks ago and shipped from somewhere. So that's a big piece of it. So the real movement I see is that move toward local. Now, that does tend to include also organic practices, and it tends to lean on CSA and farmers markets. Community-supported agriculture is a great thing for local ag because of the reasons we talked about. We have a regular market, we have this connection to people, and to me it's kind of the ultimate permutation of local agriculture because people physically go to their farm, spend time with their farmer on the farm. They have a much better understanding of what's really going on. When you hear people talk about organic farming, generally there's kind of two categories. One is the big picture of organic farming, and the smaller picture of that is certified organic. So we are organic in practice. That means that we do not use synthetic pesticides, herbicides, or fertilizers. We do focus on the health of soil, the health of the crops, using resistant varieties, things like that that have strengths on their own that don't require heavy pesticide and chemical use. And so that's kind of organic in the big picture in a nutshell. Now, the label, certified organic, is a label that comes from a government standard that is enforced by a group of certifiers. And so certifiers are private companies, or they're some of universities, sometimes they're Department of Agricultures in different states. But they're people who come out and visit the farm. They go through a long checklist. It takes about a week of paperwork and preparation for that. And they come and check everything out and make sure that you are doing what you say you're doing. So certified organic definitely has a meaning. It's a significant label. We are not certified because I'm not that good at paperwork. And I don't want to do that. And that may be a cop-out. I think in the long term, we may go the certified route. It does mean something to people. But I also would say that for us, it's much more about the relationship and people actually spending time on our farm and seeing how we do things, talking with us about how we do things, and being comfortable with that. But at its base, what we know about organic farming statistically is there's fewer pesticide residues in your food. That's the bottom line for me as an organic farmer is I want to feed people stuff that I feel good, that it's the best product I can give them. Two, there's some evidence that it has higher nutritional value. This one's a hard one to nail down because how do you compare one carrot to another? Which has pushed prices. Yeah, they were grown in different ways, but how were they treated after that? What varieties were they? So there's a lot of variables. It's very hard to pin down. But there is some evidence that, at least in certain systems, organic farming produces more nutrient-dense vegetables, meaning it's got more nutrients per volume of produce. So that's a good thing too. And then the bottom line, another piece of it for us, an important piece of this system is that it's healthier for the planet as a whole. So we're not putting chemicals on our fields that are going to wash into the streams and cause fish kills. We're not propagating the death of bees, for example, is a real problem right now. And there's not clear evidence exactly where that is, what's going on there. What is clear about the death of the bees is that pesticides are playing a role. So, now in organic, we do use pesticides, but they're organic pesticides. They're very quick to break down in the environment. They have very limited efficacy, so they just hit the species that we put them on, and they're usually gone within 2 hours. So it's not that it's just a black and white issue, but I do think that the organic movement is definitely on the healthier end of how do we produce food, how do we maintain health in the environment, and how do we maintain a healthier community too. One of the other things that I think is a big deal from an organic farmer perspective is most of us feel very passionate that we want to be good neighbors. And, agriculture right now has kind of a checkered reputation with the community, not just in our local community, but I think statewide and even wider than that. We've got these giant hog farms that some people can't stand to live nearby. We've got chicken houses that can frankly be really offensive if you walk by them at the wrong time of day. And even out in the fields, people are finding that the big farms spraying herbicides and pesticides. Well, most of that's going on that farmer's crops, but obviously not all of it is. Some of it's getting in the air and traveling. And so I think the more we can do to be good neighbors, that also builds community. And traditionally, the farmer has been one of the most trusted people in American culture. I mean, historically, teachers and farmers. Right now, I think that farmers are at a crossroads. And so moving in this sustainable and organic direction, I think is a way of us building confidence with our community as well.
Thanks to Curtis and Sarah for letting us spend a day with them. We learned a lot, and we couldn't fit it all into one segment. So if you'd like to learn more about their operation, we encourage you to look them up online. They can be found at the address below, and they can be on Facebook. And if you're close to Springfield, they welcome visitors, and they have some folks out every week. Sue, he brings up a whole bunch of issues. Obviously, a wonderful family that you're familiar with. Right. I think they have 10 children, is that right? 10 children, right. And all of them, obviously, they're working on the farm. He brings up a lot of things. Let's talk a little bit about the certification program first, which you've been involved with for a number of years. Tell us a little bit about how you become certified organic and what that process is.
Certified organic is a federal law. And so the federal government, USDA, is the holder of that law. They accredit certifying agents, and he's right. Certifying agents are independent. Some of them are for-profit. Some of them are for not-for-profit through universities and things. The certifying agent then goes through their audit, and they're accredited by the USDA. Then the certifying agent certifies the certified entities, or the farmers themselves. And so the farmer turns in the application to the certifying agent. The certifying agent has, they call it initial reviewers. Those are usually staff people, and they look at it for the ability to comply. Looks like they've got everything here. Then that certifying agent will call an independent inspector, organic inspector. That's what I do for my job. But the independent inspector has also gone through accreditation to ensure that they have the background, they have the knowledge for the type of operation they're going to inspect. The inspector will go to that farm. They will actually look at they audit all the financial records, which is different than any other type of auditing service. We'll look at all the seed tags, invoices, to make sure they're not using GMO seeds or treated seeds. We look at their planting records. We calculate potential yields for that crop. So we have to do all of our research knowing exactly what that crop has a potential to yield. Then we go out, we look at all the farm outbuildings and everything, make sure there's no chemicals on site. We come back in, we calculate then what the potential yield is. We see all their financial records, what's been sold as organic. We do a correlation between those two and determine whether there's been any kind of infractions. Usually if they are, it's, you know, maybe this farm may be downstream from a farm that's a chemical farm. They haven't thought about that, and there could be some chemicals coming onto their farm. Hey, you got to put buffers up and those type of things.
I wanted viewers to realize that your description, this is the opposite of a casual process. The certified organic is a very complicated. I think when the USDA published their rules, it was the most commented thing they'd ever done was on the organic rules.
That's exactly right. The organic rule encompasses not only, I mean, you've got a financial audit, you have to know agriculture, you have to know food safety, because now, in the last few years, USDA has also said, okay, you organic farmer, I mean, you organic inspector, you have to inspect for the organic, but you also have to be ensuring that they're meeting food safety issues. And part of that has to do with composting the litter so that there's no pathogens left into it and stuff. Chemical oversprays and those type of things.
Now what the Millsaps are doing is short of the certified process, but again, the people that come out to their farm know them, can come out, see it's grown, and so on. Describe a little bit about how that works, and that's very prominent here in Missouri.
You're exactly right. We don't really have a handle on how many farmers are growing organically. It is a local trust issue. And we encourage people like Millsaps. They do a wonderful job, and he's very conscientious. He calls me all the time, making sure, is this pesticide? Is it allowed? Is it, you know, what's the chemistry of it? Type of things, which we also have to know the chemistry of breakdowns of chemicals and stuff. But so that farmer, CSAs or selling at farmers markets, sometimes the difference between an organic and a certified organic, sometimes that farmer doesn't really understand, and he may be using something that's not really allowed if he were certified organic, and he really thought it was okay. And that's the difference, because there's a third-party audit. But normally, they're doing everything right. Curtis does everything right. So you would go to a farmer's market, and you say, how do you produce? They say, oh, well, I'm using chemicals and pesticides. You can probably tell, at least he's being honest to his knowledge. And so you say, oh, that's wonderful, that's exactly what I want. I don't want any pesticides, I'm concerned, I've read all of these things, and I want chemical-free food. And then you establish a relationship with that farmer and you say, oh man, I just want to come out to your farm. Can I come out to your farm? And so you go out to their farm, because most farmers that are producing their foods are so excited, they're so in love, they're passionate about the food that they're producing. They do it because they love it. And so you go out to their farm and you see what they're doing. CSAs, you're actually out there working with them on that farm. It's a great relationship. It's a wonderful way to reconnect you and your family with the food that you eat.
In addition to your official role as an inspector, you're also the executive director of the Missouri Organic Association. Tell us a little bit about that. And you've got a convention coming up where people can find out a lot more about how to grow and some other issues.
Thank you for that. Yes, the MOA, Missouri Organic Association, is a non-for-profit. We're so non-for-profit, we're all still volunteers. So we wish we were a little bit more for-profit. But our mission, we were formed, the MOA was actually formed in '91, but it had kind of gone down to like 20 members, so it's pretty well gone. We started up again 5 years ago, and with the express purpose to bring public knowledge to our organic and sustainable farmers. And so we started having conferences. The first conference we had was in University of Missouri, Bradford Farm, and we had 80 people, and we were so excited, and we were on the road. And that was 5 years ago. Now our conferences, we keep growing. We're now at the University Plaza Hotel in Springfield. And we're pulling between 500 and 700 people into that conference. People from Arkansas and Kansas, Nebraska, and of course a lot of Missouri. We have people coming down now from Wisconsin, Illinois. Our longest distance winter last year, we had a young man who came up from Jamaica and came up to learn how to farm organic. So yeah, we're doing some good. We're doing some real good.
And you've got a great program. I've got a preview of it, but go ahead and tell our viewers a little bit about what kind of things they could expect.
Right. We have, during our 3-day full conference, we run 6 training blocks at the same time, concurrently, and we run that 3 times a day. So 6 times 3 times 3, 54 hands-on. We always stress hands-on. And that may be because that's the way I learn. I can sit up and listen to the professors all day long, but if I get my hands into it. So we have a block on livestock production. We have one on fruits and vegetables. We have one on grain production. We have just consumer, backyard gardeners, and on and on. So all that's running on all the time.
So this is for general interest. This could be somebody that's wanting to do a garden, wanting to improve the way they're growing, or it could be somebody that wants to be in commercial business. There's something for everybody, really.
Something for everybody. And we stress organic practices, but we certainly do not condemn anyone who doesn't produce organically. We hope that we can educate you into some ways that you can just be sustainable.
Well, there's a lot of more things we could talk about, but let's give a date for that conference and location again, and how people would get in touch with you.
February 5 through 7, 2015, at the University Plaza Hotel, Springfield, Missouri. Go to our website.
You've got a website, plus you're on Facebook.
That's correct, and it's moaconference.org.
Okay. All right, let's come back then and talk a little bit more. 2 things that I see. One, I've read in articles, sometimes in some major farm magazines that might have another agenda, that organics can be dangerous. That there's somehow, and you mentioned sometimes there's maybe because of the composting and so on. That's the point they try to make, that organics can be bad for you. I'm guessing you disagree with that.
I know a lot of conventional farmers who use raw poultry litter on their farms, and they don't turn it in. They don't incorporate it into their soils. I would say that, and they use a lot of chemical pesticides. And now they're allowed to use 2,4-D, which just amazes me, Agent Orange. I would say no. We have strict composting rules, or if they're not composted, they can use raw litter if it's not for human foods. But if it's for human foods, it has to be composted. High temperatures, DNR regulations for temperatures that'll break down any pathogens, kill those. So I think they're wrong.
Sort of the last remaining question, and I know I read about this all the time. There's a UN report that says the only way that we can feed the world is through organics. There's other people that say, oh, that's impossible. We've got to adopt new technology all the time and keep pushing forward with new technology in order to feed the world. What's your opinion about this? What's the best way to feed the world?
I remember several years ago, the University of Missouri had a symposium where ag leaders from all over the world came over. And I'll never forget the little French Prime Minister of Agriculture. And the question was posed from the audience, well, you know, you got to use GMOs to feed the world. And this little Prime Minister, and he was a little short guy, I'd never forget, he just did like this, and he tucked his chin under, and he said, well, sir, we don't intend to feed the world. We want to feed France. And I think that's exactly right. If we all learn how to grow and produce for our own communities, we are feeding the world.
Well, and that's particularly an issue in some of the far-flung areas of the world where they don't have access to the chemicals and fertilizers and so on. So trying to do it organically really works better for them than trying to do it the other way.
Much more sustainable, and that's the reason I feel like it's so important for the MOA conference. We can teach people how to produce their own foods again, and for their own families, for their own communities. It builds our local communities. It builds our families. It gives our families the opportunity to stay together and work together. It gives our communities life and breath again. I travel everywhere and I see communities dying because we've got one large ag corporation that's doing the farming, and so everybody's spreading out and we're seeing communities die. I think we're seeing a moral degradation of our communities.
That's certainly true. As I've traveled around Missouri and around Kansas, some of these small towns that used to be thriving, you can see evidence. There's a school and maybe a grocery store vacant, and there's one great big grain elevator with a mound of grain outside. Right. That's all that's left of that community.
Yeah, I see families like Curtis and a lot of small farmers like that. They don't have to buy the large equipment. They can just farm, and they can gross 50 to 100,000 on 10 acres. That's pretty remarkable. And if we could find that kind of, so many of our young farm boys, children, girls, want to stay on the farm, but they don't see an opportunity financially to be able to do it. And with these types of production methods, they can stay there and they can raise their families and they can keep their families intact.
They want to stay close to home and stay in their community if they have an opportunity.
If they have an opportunity. And that's why I feel passionate about MOA.
Well,
That's our mission.
I didn't come to your conference last year. You've got me all excited, and so if we have good weather so that I'm not stuck at home taking care of the cows, I'm going to come to Springfield and go to your conference and try to learn a bit more about this.
We would certainly welcome you. We'd love to have you there.
And I hope our viewers will do that as well.
Right.
I'm afraid that's really all the time we have for tonight. And I'd like to say thanks again to Sue Baird for being with us tonight. And thank you to Curtis and Sarah Millsap for taking the time to visit with us as well. And before we go, we'd also like to thank you, our viewers, for tuning in to Show Me Ag. We'll hope you'll tune in next time for another look at a topic touching rural Missouri. For everyone here at KMOS and myself, good night. We're also very interested in what you have to say. So if you have feedback you'd like to share with us, you can email us at showmeag@kmos.org or find us on Facebook.